right, welcome everybody. This is Not Your Mom's Admissions, where we talk to you guys about today's crazy landscape of college admissions and get you up to speed. This is both for kids who are thinking about applying and the parents of kids applying who kind of want to know what's different between admissions now and when you guys were applying back in the 90s. So today, what are we talking about?
Well, hopefully we're going to help make things less crazy for you, but we are starting somewhere that feels crazy, admittedly, and let's start with standardized testing.
Standardized testing. Okay, awesome. Yeah, because kids just got ACT scores over the last week and also SAT scores. And on looking ahead, there's a test administration coming up in 1 and 2 weeks for each test.
Yes.
So what questions have you been fielding from your students?
Sorry to interrupt. I have been fielding, should I send this score? Should I send the score? Should I send the score? Should I send the score? And should I retake? How about you?
All of those questions, and also, oh my gosh, do I need to change my early decision school because I didn't hit my score or I got this really good score? Does that change what I should do in my early plan?
Always my favorite is a late game pivot. You know how patient I am about late stage pivots. So let's talk about what scores to send. Should I retake? Should I pivot? Good?
Sounds good. Yeah. I think the first one, that's a really, really tricky question, is do I send my scores if they are split in a way that's uneven? So for example, a student who has a 760 math on the SAT and a 640 verbal, or similar on the ACT, like a 35 or 36 in the STEM section and a much lower English and reading score. So what are you telling your kids?
Well, my first question is, what's their major? Or what are they indicating on their application? We'll talk about this a lot. So just to add some clarity to that, every school wants some idea of what students want to study. Sometimes it's binding, sometimes it's not. But you want to make sure that the scores map well onto a student's prospective major. So if that student's a STEM student or maybe a business student, I'd probably have them send a 760 in their math section and just accept that the 640 is probably at the 25th percentile mark or lower, because I think the risk of not sending a score outweighs the risk of getting hurt by that verbal section.
Yeah, but I think it's also really important for kids to do their due diligence and research each of their schools and see if the school is test optional. Are they favoring students with scores? As in, is there a really high percentage of matriculating students who submitted scores versus some colleges where you can definitely take them at face value? They are test optional. And in those cases, maybe submitting the 760 and the 640 would hurt them more than just not submitting. So I think it is important to look at each individual school and their history and what they've, who they've admitted in the past cycle to feel really confident about your decision about submitting or omitting.
That's such a great point. And most schools, you can see the percentage of admitted or matriculating students who've reported a score. Often the schools that really are test optional, like truly test optional, where it's a no harm testing policy, meaning you don't get hurt if you don't send a score, are liberal arts colleges. So at a liberal arts college, also your major is not really going to play as heavily into your application. So if you're thinking, okay, my score is below the 25th percentile mark, they're accepting me to the college more than they're accepting me to this major, and they really have a no harm testing policy, you're right. I probably would not send that 760, 640 split to that school.
Yeah. So what about kids who are asking whether or not they should retest at this late stage? Right now it's early October.
Such a good question. It depends a little bit on their early plan. So if a student is applying regular decision across the board, sure, they still have a little more time. They can sit for the October SAT if this is getting posted before the October SAT. And if it's already been posted, or if that test has already happened, then they can sit for the November SAT, the December SAT, still get a score back in time to inform their regular decision or include on their regular decision applications. This is probably for somebody who's late to the testing game. And similarly on the ACT, they can sit for that late October test and the December ACT. So they have a couple good shots factored into their plan. It's a whole different ballgame for the kids who are applying early, and they're trying to use their score either to figure out where they're applying early or to decide whether they're reporting a score or not reporting a score. I would say for the student who knows they're reporting a score, the score that they get in, say, October is not going to change where they're going early and whether they're reporting a score, but might boost their chances. Might get them from that 1460 to 1500. Yes, do it. It doesn't really change your plan. And if anything, it could improve your chances. Worst case, you're reporting an extra score to a school. In most cases, you probably don't even need to report that score. But worst case, you're reporting a score to a school and they're still going to take your highest. What's the case where you don't want somebody to retake, Kyla?
I definitely have told a few students not to retake when they have a pretty high score already and they have a lot of work to do on the application end. So for example, a kid who maybe has like a 750 and a 770 and they want to get even higher, but also have 6 supplements they haven't written and they're trying to hit a lot of November 1 deadlines. Those kids, I'm like, don't focus on testing. It's not worth your time because you really need to focus on having strong applications. And honestly, those 10, 20 extra points that you want, not going to move the needle realistically. And then on the total opposite end, for kids who have already tested a few times, I can see that they're probably not going to hit a score that we're going to submit. I don't want them spending time prepping. I don't want to have them spend time taking that test because I really don't think they're going to hit the score that they want. And I, again, want to see them submit really strong applications with excellent writing. And, it's crunch time now. A lot of kids are behind, or a lot of kids are trying to add extra applications that they want to submit by November 1. So I really generally like students to prioritize writing really strong essays, putting together excellent applications, and also getting everything done in advance of the deadlines.
Yes.
Because we want those apps submitted, a week or two in advance. And also they've got a lot of other applications to focus on in the fall. Like that November 1 deadline is going to come and go, and they're going to be rolling on the November 15 deadline and all the UCs that are due end of, ideally, submitted before Thanksgiving and so on.
How many points away would you say that is? 100 points away on the SAT, 2-3 points away on your composite ACT score, where you're like, yes, you're not going to bridge that gap in the time you have left?
Yes, I would say that kids who have maybe a 30 or 31 on the ACT, where sure, they could submit it to some of their likely schools if they wanted, but definitely not to target and reach schools for the most part. And then similarly, if kids are 1300 or below, or even 1350 or below on the SAT, and again, they've tested a few times, so we kind of have not seen a lot of growth or change. Those are kids where I don't want them to spend too much time focusing on test prep and retaking.
Just for a frame of reference, those would be for pretty competitive schools that want like a 34, 35 on the ACT, or maybe a 1450, 1500 on the SAT, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And what about that late pivot question? So kids who are thinking, I'm going to take it one last time in October, and then maybe might change my early decision plan. I can say one thing where I have students who are thinking about this, and we have prepared the application for one school and the other. So the pivot wouldn't be enormous because they're kind of ready to go either way. But one thing I will say is the schools are not enormously different. Like one example is UVA versus Vanderbilt, where both are really, really competitive for out-of-state applicants. But Vandy's score threshold is just much higher than UVA's. And so that's one where, the kid loves each school equally and is sort of thinking, well, okay, if I hit this score, I'll happily do ED to Vandy because I'll hit that higher score, but I'm also thrilled to apply to UVA, which has maybe like, I think Vandy's is upwards of 1,500 plus, and then UVA is, in the 25th percentile, you'd hit 14 plus and still make it.
Yes.
How about you?
Similarly, I'll have some students where they have a set of schools, maybe highest, most competitive NESCAC, and then a slightly less competitive NESCAC. So those are small liberal arts colleges on the East Coast. And maybe they're thinking, well, should I go for Williams, or do I go after a slightly less selective liberal arts college? And they have both applications ready to go. And, if they hit the 1,500, they go for it and maybe pivot to ED2 to the other school. So maybe it's like, do I do Williams ED1 and Middlebury ED2, or Middlebury ED1 and say Bates ED2 or something like that? So in the same neighborhood, and in most cases, students have both applications ready to go. If we're talking, I'm going early to this school with a 25+% acceptance rate. Now I got a 15 plus and I should go early to Harvard. You're probably going out of your range, right? Like a score is not going to get you there. So remember that it is one piece of many, and it can move the needle in small ways, but you should not be thinking about pivoting to a school with a 10% difference or more in acceptance rate.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap this up, but we do have a blog post detailing, more about when to submit, when to omit, when to retake. So you can hop onto our blog. It's on our website, scholarco.com, and tune in for our next episode. Who knows what we will be discussing.
Thanks, Kyla.
All right. Bye, Bridge.